The knife hit the floor and spun once, slow, lazy, like it was thinking about stopping somewhere else. It slid across the kitchen tiles and came to rest against the toe of her shoe. For half a second, nobody moved. The exhaust fan screamed overhead. Oil popped in a pan left unattended. Steam rolled up from a boiling pot and fogged the air until the fluorescent lights fractured into pale halos. The back door slammed shut, hard enough to rattle the racks of drying plates. She stood with her back to the sink, hands empty, apron stained with coffee and grease, hair pinned up in a way that suggested habit rather than care. A name tag hung crooked on her chest. The letters were worn down, the plastic scratched dull. Ordinary. 3 men blocked the only exit. One of them nudged the knife with his boot, pushing it farther from her foot. The sound of rubber against metal echoed too loud in the cramped room. Another slid his hand into his jacket, slow, deliberate, making sure she saw the motion. The third, thicker, calmer, expensive watch glinting at his wrist, looked around the kitchen with mild irritation, like the place itself had inconvenienced him. She did not look at the knife. She did not look at the men. She looked at the pot about to boil over. "Don't," one of them said, mistaking her glance for panic. She reached past the stove, turned the flame down with 2 fingers, and slid the pot back from the edge. Water sloshed, but didn't spill. The motion was quiet, unremarkable. It changed the room. Not visibly, not in a way any of them could have explained later. Just enough to make the laughter hesitate before it finished leaving their mouths. The man with the watch smiled wider, compensating. "You see," he said to the others. "She's cooperative." She finally looked at him. Her eyes were flat, not afraid, not defiant, present. "I need a towel," she said. Her voice barely rose above the fan. Calm, polite, the kind of tone people use when asking for something small and necessary. The young one laughed. Sharp, nervous. "You serious?" "A towel," she repeated. The man by the door reached behind him and slid the lock. The click landed like punctuation. "We're not here to make a mess," the watch said. "You just do what you're told, and this ends clean." She nodded once, as if he'd answered a question she hadn't asked. She bent, opened the cabinet under the sink, and took out a folded white towel. Clean, unused. She placed it on the stainless counter and smoothed it flat, aligning the edges with care that seemed excessive under the circumstances. She stepped back into the narrow space between counter and stove and waited. No one spoke. Oil popped. Steam hissed. Somewhere beyond the kitchen wall, plates clinked and voices rose and fell, oblivious. The watch frowned. "What are you waiting for?" "For you to move your hands," she said. The words were not a threat. They were a statement of sequence. The man with the watch laughed softly and stepped closer, invading her space until the heat from the burners brushed her forearm. "You don't understand what kind of day you're having." She tilted her head a fraction. Not curiosity, assessment. "I understand," she said. The lights went out. Not all the way. Emergency bulbs hummed to life, washing the kitchen in a sickly gray that flattened faces and stole depth from corners. The exhaust fan died. The sudden quiet pressed in. Someone swore. The young one turned, startled, instinctively checking the door behind him. The man by the lock shifted his weight, heels skidding on the damp tile near the floor drain. The watch stayed where he was. He always did. She moved. It wasn't fast. It wasn't dramatic. It was precise. She took the towel, wrapped it around the handle of the smoking pan, and lifted it off the flame. The motion blocked the watch's line of sight for less than a second. Long enough. She set the pan upside down on the prep table, trapping the smoke beneath it. The clang rang through the room like a bell struck underwater. "And," she said, The young one raised his immediately, palms out, breathing too fast. The man at the door hesitated, then followed suit. The watch smiled, eyes narrowed now, something sharp and interested cutting through the amusement. He did not move. She picked up the knife. She held it by the spine, blade down, handle offered. A gesture of courtesy, of control. She set it on the towel and slid both across the floor toward him with her foot. He blinked. The room exhaled. Relief crept in. Confidence followed. He bent to pick it up. The towel caught on the edge of the blade. His grip slipped. His expensive shoes found wet tile. He fell hard. The crack of bone against floor cut through the air. The knife skittered away, spinning toward the drain. He screamed. She was already kneeling. She pressed the towel to his wrist. Hard. It sucked. She didn't look at his face. Pressure, she told him. Her voice didn't change. The others stared, frozen, watching their leader bleed under the hands of a woman who should not have been able to do this. Boots thundered outside. A shout. The door burst open and bodies poured into the kitchen, weapons raised, voices overlapping. Down! Hands where I can see them. Who's hurt? Someone grabbed her shoulder. Wait, she said. It wasn't loud. The hand froze. She counted silently. Slow. When the bleeding slowed, she stood and stepped back, lifting her hands. They cuffed the men, dragged them out. Questions followed her like insects. What's your name? How did you? Are you trained? She shrugged once. Outside, the restaurant buzzed. Phones were out. A manager cried. Someone laughed too loud. Sirens wailed and then faded. She untied her apron and hung it on the hook by the sink. The gray streak in her hair had slipped loose again. She tucked it back. Before leaving, she stopped by the office. A child's drawing was taped crooked to the wall. She straightened it. The tape peeled. She replaced it. In the alley, an unmarked car idled. The driver watched her approach, then looked away. She paused by the dumpster, picked up a drop towel, folded it once, and set it neatly on the lid. Then she walked past the car without a glance. By morning, the story had grown teeth. And somewhere else, another ordinary room waited. The room did not calm after she left. It pretended to. By the time the sirens faded and the kitchen door swung back on its hinge, the restaurant settled into a version of normal that fooled people who wanted to be fooled. The stove was shut off. The pan cooled where it had been abandoned upside down. The knife was gone. Someone wiped the floor too quickly, smearing water instead of drying it. But the room remembered. Rooms always do. The cook spoke in fragments. The servers avoided the kitchen unless they had to. The manager replayed the moment over and over, changing small details each time to make himself feel smarter for surviving it. He told himself he'd sensed something was off about her, that he'd known she wasn't just a cleaner who helped on the line when things got busy. He hadn't known anything. By nightfall, the first version of the story reached the wrong ears. It came through a phone call made from a moving car, voice low, careful, words chosen to avoid recording. A man explained that something had gone wrong, that 3 men were in custody, that one of them needed surgery, that the woman in the kitchen had not panicked the way she should have. On the other end of the line, silence stretched. Describe her, a voice finally said. Ordinary descriptions followed. Middle-aged, quiet, work nights, no record anyone could find, no social media worth noting, no visible weapon, no visible fear. The silence deepened. By the second day, people started asking questions that did not sound like questions. A uniformed officer returned to the restaurant under the excuse of paperwork. He asked where she lived. The manager shrugged. Someone said she took the bus. Someone else said she walked. Nobody had ever followed her home. A man in a tailored coat ordered coffee and didn't drink it. He watched the kitchen door as if expecting it to open for someone who never arrived. When a shift ended, he left without paying. By the third day, the alley behind the restaurant stayed empty for too long. By the fourth, it didn't. She noticed before anyone else did. She always did. It started with the trash. The lid was open when she arrived for her shift, though she remembered closing it. A cigarette, but rested on the edge, fresh, not hers. She nudged it into the bin with her shoe and went inside. Inside, nothing had changed. That mattered. The cook cursed at a delivery that came late. A server cried in the bathroom over a tip she thought she deserved. A couple argued softly over soup. She washed her hands, tied her apron, checked the towel cabinet without thinking. During the rush, she moved the way she always had. Out of the way, efficient, invisible. When a manager snapped at her, she nodded. When a plate shattered, she swept it up before anyone stepped on it. She did not look at the man sitting alone at the counter. He had been there for an hour, ordered nothing but water, asked for no refills. He watched reflections in the stainless steel more than faces. When the rush slowed, he stood and walked toward the back. The cook blocked him, irritated. "Staff only. I'm here for her," the man said, nodding past him. The cook laughed. "You and everyone else." She set a tray down. "It's fine." The cook looked at her, surprised. "You know him?" "No," she said. The man smiled. "See? Easy." The kitchen felt smaller with him in it. Not because he was large, because he paid attention to where he stood. "I won't take much of your time," he said. "We just want to talk." She wiped her hands on her apron. "Talk." He glanced at the door, then at the camera in the corner. "Somewhere private." She nodded once and led him to the dry storage room. It smelled of cardboard and dust. The light flickered. He didn't close the door. "That was impressive," he said. She waited. "You handled a difficult situation with restraint." She said nothing. "We work with people who appreciate restraint." She met his eyes. For the first time since the kitchen, something flickered there. Not fear, recognition. "I don't work for you," she said. "You don't work for anyone," he replied gently. "That's the point." He slid a card onto a crate. "No logo. Just a number. Call if you want to stop being bothered." She glanced at the card, then pushed it back toward him. "I'm not bothered." His smile thinned. "You will be." He left. That night, the bus took longer than usual. She stood, gripping the pole, watching the city slide by in reflections. 2 stops before hers, the bus slowed and did not stop. It rolled past her street and continued on. She pulled the cord. Nothing happened. The driver did not look back. The bus turned down a road it had no reason to be on. She stepped off at the next corner without being asked and walked the rest of the way. The bus did not slow as she disappeared into the dark. Her apartment was as she'd left it. Clean. Spare. The window cracked just enough for air. The kettle empty. She locked the door. Checked the chain. Set her shoes by the wall. She slept lightly. At dawn, someone knocked. Not hard. Not urgent. 3 soft taps. Polite. She did not answer. The taps came again. Then a pause. Then the sound of someone stepping back. She waited until the hallway outside settled. That afternoon, the power went out again. This time, it did not come back on. The kitchen filled with voices. Fundy fuss. The emergency lights failed to engage. In the dark, someone moved wrong. A body hit the floor. A shout followed. Panic rippled. She stood still. A hand grabbed her wrist. She twisted, stepped inside the reach, and pressed 2 fingers into a place no one ever protects. The hand let go. She guided the falling body to the floor, careful not to let the head strike. "Stay down," she whispered. The light snapped back on. The man lay gasping, eyes wide, not understanding how he was breathing when he shouldn't have been able to. Someone laughed nervously. What happened? She shook her head. He tripped. The man at the counter watched her with something like awe. A child wandered into the kitchen one afternoon, lost, crying. She knelt, wiped the child's face with a towel, and led them back to their table. Across the room, a woman watched, hands clenched. That night, the woman waited outside. I know what you are, she said. She didn't slow her walk. You don't. They told me about the kitchen. People talk. They said you saved them. She stopped then, turned. I didn't save anyone, she said. I cleaned up. The woman swallowed. They're coming. They always do. What should I do? She considered. Then she reached into her pocket and handed the woman a folded napkin. If they ask, say you never saw me. The woman nodded, tears in her eyes. She walked away. Behind her, the city rearranged itself. By the time she reached her door, someone was already inside. The chain lay broken on the floor. She stepped in anyway. The man with the watch sat at her table, arm bandaged, smile gone. We need to talk, he said. She set her bag down. Slowly. Yes, she said. We do. And somewhere, something ancient and patient leaned forward, paying attention again. The man with the bandaged wrist did not stand when she entered. He sat at her small table like he had always belonged there, elbows resting where the wood had been worn smooth by years of solitary meals. The lamp above him was on, though she was certain she had turned it off that morning. Its yellow light carved his face into careful halves. Her door hung open behind her. The chain lay on the floor, snapped cleanly, not ripped from the wall. Someone had taken the time. She closed the door, set the lock, left the chain where it was. You shouldn't be here, she said. You shouldn't have embarrassed me, he replied. His voice had lost its playfulness. Pain had a way of sanding men down to their essentials. She took off her jacket, hung it over the chair, slipped out of her shoes, and placed them side by side near the wall. The ritual was unhurried, deliberate. You broke into my home, she said. That was a mistake. He smiled thinly. You broke my wrist. You fell, she said. Silence pressed in, thick and personal. He leaned back, testing the chair. Do you know how much effort it took to find you? She didn't answer. No records worth mentioning. No fixed routine. You move like someone who learned early not to leave tracks. His eyes sharpened. That kind of discipline doesn't come from nowhere. She filled the kettle at the sink, set it on the stove. Did not turn it on yet. You want tea? She asked. He stared at her, thrown by the question. You think this is a social call? I think you're in my kitchen, she said. And you look cold. His jaw tightened. You're very calm for someone who's alone. She finally turned the stove on. Blue flame bloomed. I'm not alone, she said. The words were not a threat. They were a statement of fact. He laughed once. You don't have backup. I checked. The kettle began to hum. You checked what you understand, she said. From the hallway came a soft sound. A footstep, careful. Then another. The man's smile faded. The bathroom door opened. A young man stepped out. Tall, narrow. His hands were empty, but the way he stood suggested that was temporary. He nodded once at her, respectful, and took a position near the window. The man at the table stiffened. Who the hell is that? A neighbor, she said. The kettle whistled. She poured the water into 2 cups, set one in front of the man with the bandage. He did not touch it. You think this scares me? He said, louder than necessary. No, she said. I think you're already scared. The young man by the window shifted his weight. Outside, a car door closed. Then another. The man at the table swallowed. You don't get to win this. She sat across from him, folded her hands. I don't play, she said. He leaned forward, anger breaking through. You humiliated us, cost us people, made us look weak. You did that, she said. You could have died, he snapped. She met his eyes. You could have left. The room seemed to shrink. From outside came the sound of voices. Low, controlled, too many. The man's bravado cracked. You think they work for you? She shook her head. They don't work for anyone. A knock came at the door. Not hard, not threatening. 3 soft taps. The man flinched. She stood, walked to the door, looked through the peephole. She opened it. The hallway filled with people who did not announce themselves. Men and women in plain clothes. Calm faces. No visible weapons. They flowed into the apartment like water finding its level. The man at the table stood abruptly. You can't just. One of the newcomers spoke his name. Just his name. It landed like a weight. He froze. No threats followed. No explanation. Just that single word, spoken quietly, correctly. Something broke in his posture. Years of practiced dominance collapsed inward. His shoulders sagged. She watched him carefully. This was the turning point. Not the violence. Not the intimidation. The recognition. One of the newcomers placed a small object on the table between them. A coin. Old. Worn smooth. No markings anyone else would recognize. The man stared at it. His face drained of color. No, he whispered. No one answered him. She picked up the coin, turned it once between her fingers. Then she set it back down, closer to him. Leave, she said. He looked at her, eyes wide, searching her face for mercy, for confirmation, for anything that made sense. You're letting him go? Someone asked from behind her. Yes, she said. The man stumbled toward the door. No one stopped him. He passed through the hallway and vanished down the stairs, breath coming in ragged pulls. Outside, engine started, then stopped, then faded. The apartment emptied as quietly as it had filled. Soon, only she and a young man by the window remained. He waited. She rinsed the cups, dried them, put them away. They'll keep watching, he said. I know. They'll keep testing. I know. He hesitated. You didn't have to let him live. She paused, considered. I didn't let him live, she said. I reminded him. The young man nodded. Do you need anything? She shook her head. He left without another word. She locked the door, replaced the chain with a new one from a drawer. That night, the city held its breath. Elsewhere, plans unraveled. Men who had been confident that morning found themselves suddenly unsure. Phones went unanswered. Orders stalled. Meetings were postponed without explanation. Stories circulated, whispered, contradictory. A woman in a kitchen, a towel, a coin. No one connected them out loud. At the restaurant, the man at the counter did not return. The alley stayed empty again. She continued her shifts. Cleaned, worked, helped when asked, corrected small mistakes before they grew. That weekend, a child went missing. It wasn't announced loudly. Not at first. A whisper between tables. A server checking her phone too often. A mother pacing outside, face folding in on itself. She watched from the kitchen doorway as panic bloomed. She untied her apron. I'll be back, she told the manager. He opened his mouth to object, closed it, nodded. The park was quiet in the late afternoon. She walked the perimeter first. Not fast, observant. She noted what didn't belong. A broken branch bent the wrong way, a shoe print too deep near the fence, the smell of cigarette smoke where smoking wasn't allowed. She followed. The trail wasn't obvious. She entered a building that pretended to be empty. Inside, voices echoed. Nervous, arrogant. She stepped inside. The men rushed her. She moved between them like someone adjusting furniture in a room she knew well. They fell. She knelt in front of the child. It's loud out there, she said gently. Cover your ears. The child did. She left them alive. She handed the child to her mother. She slipped away before anyone could ask, why she had known where to look. At home, she replaced the broken chain on her door with a stronger one. A knock came just after midnight. 3 taps. She opened the door. The young man stood there, eyes tired. They noticed, he said. She nodded. They're standing down. She waited. For good, he added. She shook her head. For now, you could disappear. We can make it clean. She looked down the hallway. I'm already gone, she said. They just haven't caught up. She closed the door gently. Weeks passed. One morning, she did not go to work. She packed lightly, cleaned the apartment. Before leaving, she took the white towel from the cabinet. She folded it once more. Smaller, neater. She placed it on the counter, exactly parallel to the edge. Then she walked out. At the bus station, she blended into the crowd. Another coat, another bag, another woman. Somewhere far away, someone woke afraid without knowing why. And in another ordinary room, she washed her hands, took in the exits, and waited. Because this was not the first time. It would not be the last.